Welcome, dear listener, to the Sleeping Hourglass. Tonight's journey carries us to old Japan, to a life shaped by steel, silence, and the long search for meaning. It is the story of Miyamoto Musashi, a warrior who spent decades mastering the sword, only to discover that the deepest victory was never over another, but over himself. We'll move slowly with him, from restless youth to still old age, letting each moment settle like dust in lamplight. If you find comfort here, you're welcome to like or subscribe, simply to keep this peaceful hour turning. Before the child opens his eyes, the world is already unsettled. Japan breathes uneasily in the final years of the Sengoku period, an age where peace feels like a rumor passed too quietly to trust. Provinces fracture and reform like broken pottery. Lords rise, fall and rise again. Armies move across rice fields that remember gentler footsteps. Smoke lingers not only over battlefields, but in the imagination of every village, every household, every waiting road. It is into this restless land that Miyamoto Musashi is born. The exact year blurs, as many things do in violent times. Some say 1584, others say a year earlier. Even his birthplace carries uncertainty, claimed by valleys and hamlets that have known too much blood to keep careful records. What remains clear is the atmosphere into which he arrives, a dawn coloured not by birdsong, but by steel. From the moment of his first breath, the country around him is sharpening itself. Men do not walk unarmed. Farmers glance toward distant hills before sunset. Children grow familiar with the weight of silence after shouted names. War is not constant thunder, but a low, persistent hum beneath daily life. It is present in the way doors are barred, in the way conversations end abruptly, in the way adults pause before answering simple questions. Musashi's infancy unfolds within this quiet tension. He cannot yet understand banners or clan names, but his body learns something older than language. It learns vigilance. It learns that the world is unstable. That safety, when it appears, must be held gently because it never stays long. The air itself seems edged. Swords are everywhere, leaned against walls, wrapped in cloth, hidden beneath floors. They are tools, heirlooms, promises, and threats all at once. To carry a blade is not always to seek violence, but to accept that violence may seek you. Even the smallest household knows this truth. Musashi grows surrounded by these unspoken rules. Outside, roads stretch like uncertain futures. Wandering samurai pass through villages with tired eyes and alert hands. Some carry honor carefully preserved. Others carry only hunger and resentment. No one can tell the difference at a distance. Trust becomes a risk measured carefully, like stepping onto ice whose thickness cannot be known. Inside, the rhythms of survival take shape. Food is prepared with efficiency. Conversations stay practical. Joy appears in brief flashes, laughter, a shared cup, a quiet evening, and then withdraws again, as if afraid of being noticed. Life continues, but always with one ear turned toward the horizon. In such a world, childhood cannot remain soft for long. Musashi is still small when he first senses that strength matters. Not brute strength alone, but presence, bearing. The way a person occupies space. He absorbs these lessons without instruction. They enter him through posture, through tone, through the unspoken authority of those who have survived longer than others. The land itself teaches him. Mountains rise around him, ancient and indifferent. Rivers flow with patience that war cannot disturb. These elements do not hurry, they do not fear, they endure. Somewhere, quietly, the child begins to watch them, to feel their steadiness, to recognize a power that does not announce itself. Yet the human world is louder. Stories circulate of betrayals, of sudden deaths, of entire clans erased before dawn. Names are spoken once and then never again. Every adult seems to carry memories they do not share. These memories leave behind the eyes, shaping decisions, sharpening tempers, teaching restraint. Musashi senses that the past is heavy. He grows under its weight even before he understands it. His body adapts. His gaze steadies. He becomes, perhaps, more serious than children should be. Not joyless, but observant. As if listening for something always about to arrive. The era does not allow innocence to linger. This is not cruelty, but necessity. To survive, one must see clearly. To live, one must accept impermanence. These truths are not taught formally. They are breathed in, day after day, until they become part of the blood. Above it all, the political storm gathers. Great lords maneuver for dominance. Alliances shift like sand. The old order trembles, sensing its end. Japan stands on the edge of unification, though few can yet imagine what that will cost. For now, uncertainty reigns, and everyone pays its price. Musashi's early years pass quietly, but never gently. He is shaped by a world that expects readiness, by a culture that respects discipline because chaos waits nearby, by a landscape that demands attention and rewards patience. These influences settle into him long before he can name them. Even as a child, he learns something crucial. That life is movement, that stillness is rare, that survival requires awareness, and awareness requires solitude. He does not yet know that these lessons will guide him far beyond battlefields, into philosophy, into art, into a lifelong search for something deeper than victory. For now, he simply exists. A small figure beneath a wide, troubled sky. A child born not into peace, but into a question still unfolding. Around him, history sharpens its edge. Within him, something quiet begins to form. A readiness not only to fight, but to endure. The dawn into which Musashi is born is violent, yes, but it is also honest. It offers no illusions. It promises no safety. It asks only one thing in return for survival: attention. And even now, before his path is visible, the child seems to listen. The father stands like a boundary the boy cannot yet cross. Shimon Munisai is a man forged by conflict, by duels fought and reputations carried like armor. He is known for his skill with the sword, for a temperament that allows little room for hesitation. In a land where strength determines survival, he believes clarity must come early and weakness must never be indulged. To him, childhood is not a sanctuary. It is preparation. Musashi watches his father closely. He studies the way Munisai moves through space, how his posture never loosens, how his voice cuts cleanly through air. There is no wasted motion, no unnecessary kindness. Everything serves a purpose, even silence, especially silence. The lessons begin early, though not always formally. Sometimes they arrive as correction, sometimes as expectation, sometimes as absence. Musashi learns quickly that approval is rare and therefore precious, that mistakes linger longer than praise, that to be noticed is to be judged. The sword becomes language. Before tenderness can settle, steel intervenes. Munisai teaches his son to grip the blade properly, to feel its weight, to respect its edge, not as a symbol, but as a reality. The sword does not forgive distraction. It does not reward carelessness. It reflects only what is given to it. These are lessons the boy absorbs deeply. Training sessions stretch long, often silent except for breath and the dull sound of wood striking wood. Musashi's hands blister. His arms ache. His body resists, then adapts. Pain becomes familiar. Fatigue becomes something to pass through, not avoid. There is little reassurance. Instead, there is repetition, correction, expectation. Munisai believes that strength, once formed, becomes its own comfort. That resilience will outlast affection, that the world will not be gentle, and so he must not be either. Musashi does not question this. He grows inward under the pressure. Where another child might soften or break, he sharpens. His attention narrows, his senses heighten. He learns to anticipate rather than react, to watch hands, to read posture, to feel danger before it announces itself. Love, if it exists, hides within these demands. It is present in the time Munisai gives, in the seriousness with which he trains his son, in the belief that Musashi is capable of enduring what others cannot. This love does not warm, it steals, yet it leaves its mark. Musashi rarely feels held, rarely feels forgiven. The child learns early that worth is earned through effort, through mastery, through not failing in visible ways. He becomes careful, self-contained, more comfortable alone than seeking reassurance. The father's shadow stretches long. In it, the boy learns discipline, but also solitude. He learns to rely on himself, to measure his value by internal standards, not comforted praise. This self-reliance will later become legendary, but for now it is simply survival within a demanding home. Outside the training yard, the world remains unsettled. Japan continues to shift beneath political tremors. Clans maneuver. Rumors travel faster than armies. Munisai understands that a boy raised gently may not live long. He does not explain this. He assumes it is obvious, and so the blade continues to teach. Musashi learns to strike without anger, to receive blows without complaint, to stand his ground even when his body trembles. Each lesson presses him further from childhood softness and closer to something harder, quieter, more controlled. He does not yet understand restraint, only endurance. At times, resentment flickers, brief, dangerous thoughts of rebellion, but they fade quickly beneath discipline. The boy does not yet know how to oppose his father, and perhaps does not want to. Munisai represents authority, survival, and the path forward. To question him feels like stepping into emptiness. Instead, Musashi internalizes everything, the praise he rarely receives, the criticism that arrives sharply, the silence that fills the space between lessons. These things gather inside him, shaping an inner world as disciplined as his outer training. The sword becomes extension. Not yet philosophy, not yet art, simply necessity. His body learns angles, timing, balance. His mind learns focus, stillness under pressure. He begins to feel moments where thought disappears and motion remains. These moments are brief, but powerful. They hint at something deeper. But for now, the father's presence dominates. Munisai's expectations hang in the air even when he is absent. Musashi trains harder when watched, and even harder when alone. He begins to chase an ideal that is never fully defined, always just beyond reach. This pursuit replaces comfort. It gives the boy direction, but it also creates distance from others, from softness, from rest. He becomes known for seriousness, for intensity that feels older than his years. The shadow does not lift. It follows him through adolescence, shaping his sense of self. Musashi does not yet realize how deeply his father's blade has cut, not into flesh, but into identity. He does not yet know how much of his later solitude begins here. Only that strength matters, and weakness must be mastered. Morning comes without ceremony. The air is thin and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. Dew clings to grass like unshed breath. Somewhere nearby, a bird calls once, then falls silent, as if aware that this day requires restraint. The world feels suspended, balanced on a moment that cannot be delayed. Musashi is 13 years old. His body is still narrow, not yet fully settled into itself. His hands, though hardened by training, are young. His face holds the last traces of boyhood. Smooth skin, eyes too large for the gravity waiting ahead. Yet his posture is steady. He stands as he has been taught, feet grounded, spine aligned, breath measured. Across from him waits a man. Arima Kihei is older, heavier with years and certainty. A samurai trained in the traditions of his school, he carries himself with confidence sharpened by experience. To him, this duel is likely a formality, a lesson delivered, a challenge dismissed. He sees a child shaped by ambition or arrogance, not yet by consequence. The ground between them is ordinary, no grand battlefield, no banners or drums, just packed earth that remembers other footsteps, other days. It will soon remember this one too. The terms are simple. One will stand, one will fall. Musashi's breath slows. He feels his heartbeat not as panic, but as rhythm. His father's teachings echo within him, not words, but habits, grip, balance, awareness. He does not think of death as concept. He feels it as presence, quiet but undeniable. There is no turning back. The duel begins without flourish. Movement replaces thought. The sound of wood striking flesh splits the air, sudden and final. Musashi advances with a force that surprises even him, driven not by rage, but by instinct sharpened too early. His training carries him forward, each motion following the last without hesitation. Arima Kihei falters. The man's confidence cracks, just enough. In a duel, enough is everything. Musashi presses forward, relentless, unaware that something irreversible is unfolding within him, even as the contest resolves without mercy. When it ends completely. The man lies broken. The ground darkens. The silence afterward feels heavier than the clash itself. No one speaks. No one celebrates. There is only breath returning, uneven and unsure, to a boy who has crossed a threshold he cannot see behind him. Musashi stands alone. Victory does not feel as he imagined. There is no surge of pride, no triumph to savor. Instead, there is a weight, dense, settling, as if the world has quietly placed something upon his shoulders. He looks at his hands, still holding the weapon. They tremble, just slightly. The earth does not judge. It accepts what has fallen upon it, as it always has. Blood sinks into soil that has known worse, will know worse again. The morning continues. The bird does not return. For the first time, Musashi understands consequence not as idea, but as sensation. A life has ended because of him. Not in theory, not in story. Here, now. This truth enters him without asking permission. It rearranges something inside. Closing a door he did not know was open. He does not weep. Tears belong to moments that can still be softened. This moment hardens. His face remains composed, though his inner world shifts like ground after an unseen quake. He feels older, suddenly, but not wiser, only altered. Those who witness the duel speak quietly afterward. Some see promise. Some see danger. A boy who defeats a seasoned samurai is not easily placed into comfortable categories. Whispers follow him, admiration tangled with unease. Musashi hears little of it. Sound seems distant, muffled by the echo of what he has done. He walks away from the sight slowly. Each step feels deliberate, as if he must relearn how to move through the world. The path home looks the same, but it no longer feels the same. Familiar trees appear changed, as though watching him differently. He wonders, briefly, if they know. That night, sleep comes unevenly. When it does, it brings no comfort. Images return unbidden. The moment of impact, the sudden stillness. Musashi wakes before dawn, breath quick, mind alert. Something has taken root within him, something that will not loosen its hold. In the days that follow, training resumes, but it is no longer preparation. It is continuation. Each strike carries memory now. Each lesson echoes with lived proof. The sword is no longer abstract discipline. It is a boundary between existence and absence. Musashi grows quieter. He does not speak of the duel unless asked, and even then, only briefly. Words feel insufficient. What happened cannot be explained without being diminished, and so he lets it remain intact within him, heavy and unshared. Innocence does not leave dramatically, it simply does not return. The boy who stood on that cold ground remains behind, though his body continues forward. In his place walks someone newly aware that paths, once chosen, do not reverse. That skill carries responsibility. That survival sometimes demands the unthinkable. The world continues to turn. War still hums beyond the horizon. Lords still maneuver. Roads still stretch outward, waiting. Musashi does not yet know where those roads will take him, only that they have opened wider now, edged with steel and consequence. At 13, he has faced death, not as witness, as cause. And though the morning sun rises as it always has, its light falls on a boy who understands, for the first time, that every step forward leaves something behind in the dark. The morning at Sekigahara does not arrive gently. Mist clings to the low plain like a held breath, thick and uncertain. Hills loom on every side, their slopes crowded with men who wait without knowing what the day will demand of them. Armor creaks softly, banners hang heavy with moisture, the air smells of damp earth, oil, and something sharper, anticipation edged with fear. Japan has gathered itself here. For decades, the country has been unraveling, thread by thread, clan by clan. Loyalties have shifted like weather. Promises have been broken quietly, then loudly. Now, in this wide basin between mountains, those tensions press together, finally unable to avoid one another. Musashi moves among the gathered forces as one figure among thousands. He is no longer a child, but neither is he yet settled into the identity he will carry through history. His body has grown stronger, his movements more assured, yet, inside him, questions remain unresolved. The duel of his youth taught him consequence. Sekigahara will teach him scale. The battle does not begin all at once. It unfolds unevenly, confused by terrain and hesitation. Signals are misread. Orders arrive late or not at all. Men advance, then stop, then advance again, driven less by strategy than by momentum and fear. The mist thins as the sun climbs, revealing ranks upon ranks of humanity poised for destruction. Then the noise begins. Drums beat, shouts tear through the air, arrows darken the sky briefly like startled birds. The sound of bodies colliding replaces thought. Metal meets metal. Flesh meets earth. The plain becomes a living thing, churning and screaming. Musashi moves forward because there is nowhere else to go. Around him, formation collapses almost immediately. Men trip over fallen bodies. Horses scream and rear. The ground grows slick beneath his feet, no longer soil but a mixture of mud and blood. The sword in his hand feels suddenly inadequate, not because it lacks sharpness, but because it cannot impose order on chaos. There is no duel here. No measured exchange. No moment of stillness before engagement. Opponents appear and vanish in seconds. Attacks come from angles unseen. Survival depends not on honor, but on awareness sharpened to pain. Musashi fights as he has been trained, but training strains beneath the weight of reality. He strikes, blocks moves, breath ragged, eyes burning. He cannot remember faces. Only shapes, motion, threat. The individuality of combat dissolves. Each man becomes interchangeable, not enemy or ally, but obstacle or opening. Time loses its structure. Moments stretch, then collapse. He does not know how long he fights, only that stopping feels impossible. The noise is overwhelming, a constant roar that leaves no room for reflection. Even thought becomes dangerous, a distraction that could cost everything. Somewhere nearby, a banner falls. It is trampled almost immediately, its colors swallowed by the churn of bodies. Musashi sees this and feels something loosen inside him. The symbol meant to represent unity, purpose, righteousness, reduced to fabric beneath boots. This, he realizes, is war, not the clarity of a duel, not the clean line between life and death. War is confusion layered upon confusion, violence multiplied until meaning dissolves. It is men following orders they do not fully understand, driven by loyalties shaped far from this field. When the tide shifts, it does so quietly. Alliances betray themselves mid-battle. Forces that should advance hesitate instead. The balance tips not through valor, but through timing and calculation far removed from the mud. Musashi does not see these decisions being made. He only feels their consequences ripple through the field. Suddenly, retreat becomes survival. The press of bodies thins. The noise changes pitch. Shouts turn frantic. Men begin to flee, some wounded, some unbroken but terrified. Musashi moves with them, instinct guiding his feet through paths that barely exist. He looks back once. What he sees does not resemble victory. Corpses lie where moments before men stood shouting. Armor glints uselessly in the sun. The plain stretches wide and ruined, its stillness beginning to return as if nothing has happened at all. Later, it will be called a decisive battle. Historians will name winners and losers. Lines will be drawn. A new order will rise from the wreckage. But in this moment, standing among the survivors, Musashi feels none of that clarity. Only exhaustion, only a hollowness that victory does not fill. He has survived, yes, but survival feels accidental, undeserved. Too many have fallen for meaning to emerge easily. Too many lives have ended without ceremony or recognition. The sword in his hand feels heavier now. Not because of blood, but because of understanding. He sees that skill alone cannot master chaos. That courage does not guarantee purpose. That war does not reward virtue. It consumes everything equally. As night approaches, the field quiets. Fires burn where camps once stood. The wounded moan softly. Smoke drifts upward, carrying the scent of loss into the darkening sky. Musashi sits among the living, his back against the earth, and listens. For the first time since his duel years ago, he feels truly small, not insignificant, but humbled. A single man among tens of thousands, swept along by forces too vast to oppose. The certainty he once felt about the sword wavers, not disappears, but loosens. He wonders what mastery means in a world like this. He wonders if strength can exist without destruction. These questions do not yet have answers, but they take root here, in the aftermath of Sekigahara, amid broken banners and unclaimed dead. The battlefield does not instruct him gently. It strips away illusion and leaves only what remains. War has taught him something the sword never could. That survival is not triumph. That victory can feel empty. That chaos obeys no code. And as Musashi rises and walks away from the field, he carries this knowledge with him. Heavy, unresolved, and quietly transformative. The road does not ask who he was. It opens before Musashi without ceremony, pale and worn by countless feet that passed with their own reasons, their own burdens. Morning light spills across it gently, touching stones and dust with equal indifference. There is no gate marking departure, no witness to confirm that a life has shifted. He simply walks. Behind him, Sekigahara fades into silence. Ahead, uncertainty stretches farther than the eye can follow. Musashi carries little. A blade, worn clothing, the knowledge etched into his muscles. Everything else has been stripped away. Allegiance, expectation, even the illusion of belonging. He moves now as a Ronin, a masterless samurai unanchored in a land that still trembles from war's passing. Footsteps replace home. Each step becomes both progress and pause. The rhythm of walking settles into his body, steady and patient. With time, the road teaches him how to listen, to wind moving through grass, to distant water, to the subtle shift of seasons. These sounds ask nothing of him. They do not demand strength, they simply exist. Hunger arrives early. Not dramatic, not cruel, just persistent. Meals become uncertain, measured by luck and circumstance. Sometimes a bowl of rice offered without question, sometimes nothing at all. His body adjusts, learning restraint where abundance once pretended to exist. Comfort recedes quietly. Musashi sleeps beneath trees, in empty sheds, beside temples that hum softly through the night. He learns the language of ground. How to rest on uneven earth. How to wake before cold settles too deeply into bone. These nights are long, but not empty. Stars become familiar companions, tracing paths older than war. In towns, he observes before he enters. Each village carries its own mood, shaped by recent memory. Some are wary, eyes lowered, voices cautious. Others are loud, desperate to forget what they have seen. Merchants shout. Children run. Life insists on continuing, even when scars remain visible. Musashi moves through these spaces like a shadow. Sometimes he is challenged. A local swordsman seeking reputation. A drunk warrior testing pride. A school defending its name. Each encounter feels similar at first. Tension, movement, resolution. Yet something within him begins to shift. The fights feel smaller now, not easier, but less consuming. Victory arrives without celebration. Defeat, when it threatens, sharpens focus but not fear. He notices that each opponent reflects something different. Arrogance, desperation, fear, discipline. In facing them, he sees parts of himself refracted and distorted. Each town becomes a mirror. In one place, he is known as dangerous. In another, as strange. In another, barely noticed at all. These identities slide across him without settling. The road does not allow permanence. Loneliness stretches quietly across the years. It is not loud grief, it is absence of conversation, of shared memory, of anyone who knows his past. Days pass without his voice being heard. Nights pass without his name spoken. At first, this feels sharp. Later, it becomes familiar. In this solitude, thought deepens. Without distraction, Musashi begins to examine himself as carefully as he once examined opponents. He notices how his mind moves before his body, how tension forms, how expectation interferes with clarity. The road becomes teacher, offering no answers, only space. He walks through rain that soaks him without apology, through heat that presses down relentlessly, through winters that tighten breath and stiffen joints. Each season reshapes him slightly, sanding away what is unnecessary. The sword remains, but its role changes. It is no longer proof, no longer ambition. It becomes companion, present, but not dominant. Musashi practices less frequently, but with greater attention. Each movement becomes intentional, each pause meaningful. At times, he passes temples. Their bells echo softly through valleys, reminding him that stillness exists beyond survival. He does not stay long. Something restless keeps him moving, yet these moments linger, planting questions he does not yet name. What is mastery? Is it victory repeated, or understanding refined? Is strength measured by conquest or by restraint? The road offers no verdict, only experience. Years slide by unnoticed. Musashi's body matures. His gaze steadies further. Lines appear where youth once softened his face. He becomes known in certain places, avoided in others. Stories follow him loosely, exaggerated and reshaped by distance. He listens, but does not correct them. The road strips identity down to motion. To walk is to exist. To stop is to choose. Musashi begins to appreciate this simplicity. Each day offers a single question: where next? The answer requires no justification. And yet, beneath this freedom, something stirs. A sense that repetition alone is insufficient. That the endless cycle of town, challenge, departure will not resolve the questions that Sekigahara planted. He feels this not as urgency, but as pressure, subtle, patient, persistent. One evening, resting beside a narrow river, he watches water slide around stones without struggle. The image stays with him. He wonders if his own life might learn a similar movement, not forcing, not resisting, simply adapting. The thought is faint, incomplete, but it marks a quiet turning. The journey inward has begun, not as decision, but as inevitability. Solitude has opened a space where reflection gathers naturally. Hunger has clarified desire. Loneliness has sharpened awareness. The road, endless and impartial, has begun its slow work. Musashi rises before dawn and continues walking. The world does not change dramatically. Towns remain towns. People remain people. Yet something within him has shifted enough to notice nuance where once there was only threat. He is still wandering, still unmoored, but no longer empty. The road does not end, it only unfolds. Musashi walks beneath changing skies, carrying little more than his blades and the weight of his reputation. Villages rise and fall behind him like breaths taken and released. The seasons pass without asking permission. In each place, word arrives before he does. A young Ronin, undefeated, rough in manner, sharp in silence. Some speak his name with curiosity, others with fear, a few with ambition sharpened into challenge. The duels begin without ceremony. Sometimes they happen at dawn, when mist still clings to the ground and the world feels unfinished. Sometimes beneath temple gates, where prayer bells hang silent, unsure whether to witness violence or look away. Sometimes on dirt roads, beside rice fields bending patiently in the wind. There is no single stage, only moments where two paths cross and neither turns aside. Musashi does not seek these encounters, yet he does not refuse them. Each duel carries its own rhythm. The careful measuring of distance, the listening before movement, the breath that decides everything. Steel flashes, bodies shift, time compresses into heartbeats, then it is over. One stands, one does not. 60 times Musashi survives. The victory stack quietly, like stones placed beside a river. Each one adds weight, but not warmth. He feels his body changing, reflexes sharpening, muscles learning without thought. His hands move faster than intention. His feet find balance even on uneven ground. Combat becomes familiar, almost intimate. He understands angles the way others understand language, yet something remains unsettled. After each duel, there is a pause, not celebration, not relief, but a hollow quiet. He cleans his blades with steady hands. He bows, whether or not his opponent can see. He turns away and resumes walking, as if leaving behind a conversation that never reached its meaning. At night, he sleeps lightly. Dreams come in fragments, faces without names, eyes wide with surprise. The sound of steel echoing long after waking. He does not dwell on guilt, that would be too easy, too simple. Instead, he feels a growing distance between skill and satisfaction. Victory answers nothing. Defeat has not come to teach him. The road stretches on, and mastery feels incomplete. The world treats him as a phenomenon, a living rumor. Schools send their strongest students. Masters test him in the hope of confirming their own worth. Young men approach with anger in their fists and fear in their throats. Each believes this duel will be the one that defines them. Musashi sees himself reflected in their eyes, not as he is, but as they imagine him to be. He begins to notice patterns, how pride stiffens the body, how fear shortens the breath, how expectation blinds even skilled hands. Many duels end before the first strike, decided in posture and timing rather than force. Musashi learns that the sword is only an extension of the mind that holds it. Still, peace does not arrive. Between duels, he walks alone. He eats sparingly. He listens to the sounds of ordinary life. Children laughing, water boiling, farmers speaking softly to their fields. These moments feel distant, like scenes glimpsed through a window he no longer knows how to open. The road has shaped him into something sharp, but also narrow. He wonders sometimes what all this is for. The question arrives unannounced like a sudden wind. Not during combat, but afterward. In the silence that follows survival, in the long stretches of walking where there is nothing to fight, nothing to prove, he realizes that skill, no matter how refined, does not answer the deeper hunger he carries. And yet, he continues. Each duel teaches him something new, not about others, but about himself. He learns restraint the hard way. He learns that anger wastes energy, that haste invites mistakes, that stillness unsettles opponents more than threat. Slowly, without intending to, he begins to fight less with force and more with timing, with presence. The body obeys. The soul remains restless. There are moments when he arrives too late. Challengers who lose their nerve, who bow and step aside. These encounters disturb him more than combat. He feels the edge of his identity blur. If no one challenges him, who is he becoming? A sword unused dulls, but a sword used without purpose corrodes from within. The duels change him in subtle ways. He begins to see combat not as a clash, but as a conversation, brief, honest, unforgiving. Each opponent reveals themselves in the first movement. Musashi listens with his entire being. He responds not with excess, but with what is necessary. Over time, necessity becomes elegance. Still, satisfaction remains distant. On one quiet evening, after another victory under a fading sky, Musashi sits alone beside a stream. He washes blood from his hands and watches it dissolve into the current. The water does not remember. The stones do not judge. The sky darkens without comment. For the first time, he wonders if the path he walks is incomplete by design. The 60 duels carve his name into history, but they do not carve peace into his heart. He begins to suspect that mastery is not something seized through repetition alone. That defeating others is only a beginning, not an ending. The sword has taken him far, but not far enough. As the stars emerge, Musashi rises and resumes walking. The road accepts him without question. Ahead, challenges remain, not just of strength, but of understanding. The duels have sharpened his body to its limits. What remains is something quieter, waiting to be faced. Kyoto stands differently from the road. Its streets carry memory the way stone carries heat. Temples lean into the sky with practiced humility. Schools of swordsmanship breathe history through wooden floors worn smooth by generations of feet. This is not a place of wandering challenges or nameless encounters. This is a place where traditions guard themselves fiercely, where lineage matters as much as skill. It is here that the name Yoshioka still commands respect. Once, the Yoshioka school trained shoguns. Its banners hung with confidence. Its masters spoke with authority earned through time, not wandering. Even now, though its glory has dimmed, its pride remains intact, polished, inherited, unquestioned. And into this ordered world walks Musashi. He arrives without announcement. He does not bow deeply, nor does he posture. His clothes are travel-worn. His presence unsettles, not because it threatens, but because it refuses to perform. Word spreads quickly. The undefeated Ronin stands at the edge of an old tradition. A challenge is inevitable. The first duel is arranged with formality, yet beneath it hums a collective expectation. The Yoshioka school believes this will restore what has been slipping away. Musashi is young, rough, and alone. The weight of history stands against him. The duel is brief. Timing decides it, not strength, not anger. Musashi steps into a moment that others overlook. When it ends, the master of the Yoshioka school lies defeated. Silence fills the space where certainty once lived. But tradition does not yield easily. Humiliation sharpens into resolve. The school demands another meeting, this time with preparation, witnesses, and intent. Musashi understands what is unfolding. This is no longer about skill alone. It is about pride defending itself against erosion. He does not refuse. The second encounter carries tension thicker than ceremony. Students gather. Teachers watch. The air feels heavy with expectation. Musashi arrives late, deliberately. He allows impatience to rise, to ripple through the gathered ranks. When the duel begins, it ends as the first did, swiftly, decisively. Something fractures. The Yoshioka school can no longer pretend this is coincidence. What stands before them is not simply a skilled man, but a mirror exposing weakness they have refused to see. Their response is no longer honorable challenge, but collective desperation. They choose ambush. At dawn, beneath the pale light filtering through trees, dozens of swords wait. Young men, trained and eager, hide behind branches and pride. They believe numbers will restore balance. That force will correct humiliation. Musashi arrives early. He senses the shape of what is coming. Not through sight alone, but through absence. The forest feels wrong. Too quiet, too arranged. He does not draw his sword immediately. He breathes. He listens. He adjusts. When movement erupts, he does not meet it head-on. He moves through it. Timing replaces rage. Position replaces aggression. Musashi does not fight every man. He dissolves their formation. He breaks rhythm. He turns momentum against itself. Each motion is economical, almost gentle, yet final. Steel flashes. Cries rise and fall. Then, as quickly as it began, it ends. The forest exhales. The Yoshioka school is broken, not annihilated, but undone. Its students scatter. Its authority dissolves into rumor. What collapses is not only bodies or banners, but the belief that tradition alone can substitute for understanding. Musashi stands alone among fallen swords. He feels no triumph, only clarity. For the first time, he understands fully that mastery is not dominance. That strength multiplied without wisdom becomes fragile. That pride, once wounded, will always choose noise over stillness. As he leaves Kyoto, Musashi carries something new, not confidence, but restraint. The sword begins to change in his hands. It feels less like a weapon, more like a question. He walks away without looking back. Behind him, an old school fades into history. Ahead of him, the road continues. Quieter now, but deeper. The duels ahead will no longer be about proving ability. They will be about understanding limits. And somewhere beyond pride and victory, another meeting waits. One that will ask not how well he fights, but why. The sea does not hurry. It breathes in slow, ancient rhythms, indifferent to names, unmoved by reputation. Waves arrive, fold into themselves and retreat, carrying nothing of what humans bring to its edge. On a narrow island, carved by wind and salt, two men approach the same moment from opposite directions. Musashi arrives first. He steps onto the shore as morning stretches thin light across the water. The island feels bare, stripped of distraction. No temples, no crowds, only stone, sand, and the quiet insistence of the tide. He carries a wooden sword, freshly carved from an oar, its grain still rough beneath his hands. He does not rush. Instead, he stands and listens, not for his opponent, but for himself. Breath steadies. Thoughts settle. He feels the long road behind him. The 60 Duels, the fallen school, the lessons learned in motion and restraint. All of it narrows toward this point, like water drawn toward a single outlet. Across the water, Sasaki Kojirō approaches. His reputation precedes him like a banner lifted by wind. He is elegant where Musashi is rough, precise where Musashi is adaptable. His long blade, the famed nodashi, hangs at his side, a weapon known for reach and grace. Kojirō walks with confidence shaped by admiration and expectation. The two men are spoken of together long before they meet. They are called opposites, rivals, reflections. Each is said to represent a way of the sword. Yet neither man speaks these stories aloud. Words feel unnecessary now. The sea has already quieted them. When Kojirō steps onto the island, the air tightens. There is no crowd to witness this meeting, no officials to formalize it, only sky and stone and salt. The duel is arranged simply because it must be. Two paths that cannot avoid one another finally converge. Kojirō smiles faintly. He expects Musashi to be late. He expects arrogance or trickery. He expects a contest worthy of memory. Musashi meets his gaze without expression. There is no challenge in his eyes, no need to assert presence. He stands as one who has already accepted whatever follows. The duel begins without signal. Steel moves. Wood answers. The moment is brief, almost cruel in its efficiency. Musashi steps forward at an angle Kojirō does not anticipate. The wooden blade arcs with decisive force, striking before elegance can unfold. There is no second exchange, no prolonged dance. The nodachi falls from Kojirō's hands as his body follows. The sound is dull, final. Sasaki Kojirō lies still. The sea continues. For a heartbeat, Musashi stands frozen, as if unsure whether the world will change now that the blade has spoken. Then he exhales. Slowly, carefully. He looks at the man he has just defeated, not with triumph, not with disdain, but with recognition. Something has ended. Not just a life, but a pursuit. The idea that victory will complete him dissolves in the salt air. He feels no surge of satisfaction, no relief, only a widening quiet that stretches outward, touching everything. Musashi turns away. He does not linger. He does not claim the moment. He steps back toward his boat as waves trace and erase his footprints behind him. The island reclaims itself. The duel fades into rumor, then legend, then history. But the silence follows him. As he rows away, Musashi feels the weight of finality settle into his bones. This duel was not one among many. It was a threshold. Beyond it, the road does not feel the same. The sword in his hands feels lighter, not from use, but from exhaustion. He understands now that nothing waits on the other side of victory. The sea opens before him, endless and unmarked. Musashi watches the island shrink until it becomes indistinguishable from the horizon. He feels older, though little time has passed. The lessons that once arrived through combat now arrive through absence. There will be no greater duel. No opponent left who can offer what he seeks. Kojirō was not merely a rival. He was the last question asked by the blade. And now that question has been answered. Though not in the way Musashi expected, the silence deepens. In the days that follow, Musashi travels without urgency. He avoids challenges. He passes schools without stopping. His movements slow, not from weakness, but from reconsideration. He begins to notice things he once ignored. The sound of wind through bamboo, the patience of water shaping stone. Combat feels distant. When he holds his sword now, it no longer defines him. It feels like a tool he has outgrown, or perhaps finally understands. The edge that once demanded use now invites restraint. Musashi senses that his life is turning inward towards something less visible but more demanding. He remembers Kojirō's blade flashing in the sun, not as an enemy, but as a moment of clarity. Two lives intersecting briefly, honestly, without ornament. There was no hatred between them. Only inevitability. The sword had asked its final question, and silence had answered. Musashi begins to seek places without conflict. He spends time alone, thinking not of technique, but of timing beyond combat, timing of words, of action, of withdrawal. He understands now that mastery is not accumulation, but reduction, not adding skill, but removing excess. The sea taught him that. It takes without claiming, it moves without striving, it ends without explanation. Musashi carries that lesson quietly, letting it settle into his posture, his breath, his presence. Victory no longer calls to him. Instead, stillness does. After the sea, Musashi does not return to silence immediately. Instead, something new begins to take shape within him. Not loud enough to announce itself, not sharp enough to demand attention. It grows quietly, like a second breath beneath the first. The sword no longer asks to be tested. It asks to be understood. Musashi walks with a different posture now. His steps are slower, but not hesitant. His gaze rests longer on ordinary things. The curve of a branch, the balance of stones beside a path, the way fishermen lift their nets in practiced harmony. He notices how movement succeeds not through force, but through timing, through cooperation with what already exists. The sword, he realizes, has been teaching him this all along. In time, he begins to train again, not for duels, but for clarity. He experiments not to dominate, but to listen. One sword feels insufficient. Two swords feel excessive. Yet when he holds both, something aligns. The long sword in one hand, the short sword in the other. They do not compete, they converse. Musashi begins to move with them as if they are extensions of breath rather than tools of violence. The long sword traces intention. The short sword responds to proximity. One creates space, the other closes it. Together, they reflect balance, outward and inward, advance and restraint. This is not spectacle, it is refinement. He practices alone, beneath trees and open sky. His movements are measured, almost restrained, yet unmistakably alive. There is no wasted motion, no dramatic flourish. Each action resolves itself naturally, like a sentence ending exactly where it should. Two swords, one rhythm. Those who observe him struggle to name what they see. It does not resemble the teachings of established schools. There is no rigid stance, no predictable sequence. Musashi adapts continuously, adjusting without effort, as though responding to an unseen current. What he is shaping is not merely a technique. It is a way of perceiving. He understands now that fighting is not about overpowering an opponent, but about occupying the moment fully, to see without anticipation, to act without attachment, to move without insisting on outcome. The swords become teachers of presence. Sometimes he sets them aside entirely. He trains with empty hands, tracing the same movements, feeling the same balance. He learns that the body itself holds memory. That understanding does not vanish when steel is absent. The sword was never the source. It was the lens. Musashi begins to teach, though he does not call himself a teacher. Those who come to him expect instruction. Instead, they receive observation. He watches how they stand, how they breathe, how they approach conflict before it begins. He corrects little, he demonstrates rarely, he waits. When he does speak, his words are spare. Do not fix your mind, he says. Let it move. Some leave frustrated, others remain. The two-sword method spreads slowly, carried not by doctrine, but by example. It unsettles established schools, not because it challenges them directly, but because it refuses their boundaries. It cannot be easily named, copied, or constrained. It belongs to movement itself. Musashi senses that this understanding extends beyond combat. He applies it to walking, to eating, to silence. He sees how conflict arises from imbalance, how resolution often requires less effort than resistance. The world feels less adversarial now. When danger appears, he responds without drama. When it does not, he does not invent it. The edge that once sought challenge now rests comfortably within stillness. The swords remain sharp, but they no longer hunger. He begins to write notes. Not formal teachings, but fragments of thought. Observations gathered from years of motion and stillness. They are not meant to impress. They are meant to clarify. He writes of rhythm, of timing, of emptiness. Emptiness not as absence, but as readiness. In this state, Musashi understands something essential. Mastery is not accumulation. It is subtraction. Each year removes something unnecessary, pride, urgency, fear. What remains is simple but not easy. Two swords in hand, one empty center. He knows now that true combat leaves no trace, that the highest skill resolves itself before collision. That understanding does not announce victory. The sword, once central, recedes into the background. It becomes a companion rather than a goal. As Musashi grows older, his movements soften further. Strength remains, but it is no longer showcased. He demonstrates less and observes more. His life begins to turn toward quieter expressions of the same principles. Ink, stone, silence. The swords rest more often, but their lesson remains alive, in posture, in breath, in the way he enters a room and leaves it unchanged. Two swords taught him unity. The empty hand teaches him release. The path ahead no longer requires steel. It asks for patience. The sword grows quiet before it is ever set down. Musashi feels the change not as a decision, but as a soft loosening. His hands, once alert to the slightest threat, now rest more often at his sides. The edge that shaped his life does not vanish. It simply stops asking to be used. In its place, something slower begins to speak. He settles for longer stretches of time. The road no longer calls with urgency. He chooses places where the air feels patient, mountain foothills, temple outskirts, huts where light enters gently through paper walls. In these spaces, sound behaves differently. Footsteps echo less. Even thoughts seem to move with care. Here, Musashi begins to paint. At first, the brush feels unfamiliar. It does not respond to force. Pressure ruins what precision cannot fix. Ink spreads according to its own will, pooling where the hand hesitates, thinning where breath steadies. He learns quickly that aggression has no place here. The brush demands listening. When he paints, time slows. One stroke holds the weight of 100 movements. There is no correction, no reversal. The line appears and it remains, honest, irreversible. Musashi recognizes this immediately. It feels like a duel where the opponent is the self and impatience always loses. Ink replaces blood. He paints birds perched mid-thought, branches bent by unseen wind, faces suggested, not defined. There is emptiness in his work, deliberate, spacious. He leaves room for silence to speak. Those who see his paintings feel something settle inside them, though they struggle to name it. Musashi does not explain. He sculpts as well, carving wood and stone with deliberate restraint. Each strike of the chisel is measured, patient. He listens to resistance, learns where material wishes to yield. The act reminds him of combat, yet stripped of hostility. Here, effort collaborates with form rather than conquering it. Creation teaches him humility. When a piece breaks, it does not bleed. It simply ends. He accepts this without frustration. Failure here feels different, instructive rather than condemning. He begins again, calmer each time. Writing follows naturally. Musashi writes not to impress, but to clarify. His words are spare, sharpened by years of silence. He records observations about rhythm, about timing, about emptiness. He does not separate art from combat or life from discipline. All movement belongs to the same current. The warrior softens without weakening. Those who visit him notice the change first in his presence. He speaks less, but listens fully. His gaze no longer measures threat. It receives. Conversations feel unhurried around him, as though time adjusts itself out of respect. He understands now that destruction taught him limits, but creation teaches him care. The brush does not hurry. The stone does not yield to anger. Ink responds only to steadiness. These lessons reach places the sword never could. They calm the restless edges left behind by years of readiness. Musashi begins to see his past differently. The duels, the victories, the blood, they no longer define him, but they are not denied. They become foundations rather than peaks. Necessary, but no longer central. The sword carried him to this threshold. Art carries him through it. He paints late into the evening, guided by lamplight. Shadows stretch across the walls, soft and patient. The world feels intimate again, not adversarial. He senses how creation mirrors life itself, each moment unrepeatable, each action leaving a mark. The greatest discipline, he realizes, is gentleness, not weakness, but restraint born of understanding. to act without excess, to speak without force, to move without insistence. These truths arrive quietly, settling deeper than any victory ever did. As seasons turn, Musashi's reputation changes. He is still known as a swordsman, but those who meet him leave remembering something else. The way he watched a leaf fall, the care with which he lifted a cup, the silence he allowed to finish sentences. His presence teaches without instruction. The blade rests nearby, but it is no longer the center. When Musashi holds the brush, his hand feels empty and complete at once. Nothing to prove, nothing to defeat. Only the moment waiting to be shaped honestly. Creation does not erase his past. It redeems it. The cave is quiet enough to hear breath become thought. Musashi sits with his back against stone, the chill of it seeping through cloth and bone, grounding him. The sword rests nearby, but it no longer demands attention. It is only an object now, useful, familiar, no longer hungry. What remains restless are the years themselves, circling inside him, asking to be shaped before they dissolve. He does not write to glorify victory. He writes because memory presses heavily and silence alone can no longer hold it. Ink is prepared slowly. The brush is lifted with the same care once given to a blade. Each movement is deliberate. Nothing here is rushed. Nothing needs to be proven. This book is not instruction for war, though many will later treat it as such. It is a map of seeing, a distillation of decades spent walking roads without names, facing men whose eyes mirrored his own doubts, surviving battles that taught him more through emptiness than triumph. The words arrive spare, stripped of decoration. They are meant to endure, not to comfort. He begins with earth. Earth is foundation, the ground beneath the feet, the stance that does not waver when the world pushes back. Musashi writes of balance, posture, patience, of knowing where one stands before daring to move. In battle, as in life, those who do not understand their footing are easily undone. Earth is not passive. It is stable. It receives weight without complaint. It teaches endurance without pride. From earth, he flows into water. Water changes without resistance. It fills the shape given to it, adapting, yielding, surviving. Musashi has lived this lesson unknowingly for years, adjusting to opponents, to hunger, to shifting times. Now he names it. Water is flexibility of mind. It is the refusal to cling to a single way. Where rigidity breaks, water continues. Victory, he suggests quietly, belongs to those who can move without attachment. Fire follows as it must. Fire is action, speed, commitment. The moment when hesitation is no longer possible. Musashi does not romanticize it. Fire burns both wielder and target if handled carelessly. He writes of timing, of decisive movement born from clarity rather than rage. Fire is necessary, but never sovereign. It must be guided, or it consumes all that remains. Then comes wind. Wind is the study of others, the understanding of rival schools, rival minds, rival paths. Musashi writes with subtle critique, not mockery. To know one's own way without knowing another's is blindness, he insists. Wind carries whispers of arrogance, of traditions grown stagnant, of techniques preserved beyond their usefulness. To feel the wind is to recognize illusion when it parades as certainty. At last, he reaches what cannot be grasped. Emptiness. Here the brush slows. Emptiness is not nothingness. It is clarity without obstruction. It is the absence of fear, ego, fixation. Musashi struggles briefly to explain it, then allows simplicity to do the work. Emptiness is seeing what is, without distortion, acting without hesitation, because the self no longer interferes. It is the space between thoughts, between breaths, where truth waits patiently. These are not ideas learned in isolation. Each ring is forged from loss, from nights without shelter, from victories that tasted of ash, from watching opponents fall and realizing something essential fell with them. The book holds none of his duels by name. It does not recount the beach at Ganryu-jima, nor the fallen schools, nor the echoes of steel. Those stories have already taught what they can. This writing is what remains after experience has been burned down to essence. Musashi does not imagine an audience. He writes as if speaking to a future he will never meet, knowing only that the lessons must stand alone. He avoids ornament, avoids persuasion. The reader, he understands, must meet these words as they are, stark, demanding, uncompromising. This is not philosophy meant to soothe. It is meant to sharpen perception until illusion can no longer hide. Outside the cave, seasons turn without ceremony. The world continues its quiet labor of decay and renewal. Musashi feels his body thinning, strength withdrawing inward. Yet something else expands, a lightness, the weight he once carried, of proving, defeating, enduring, loosens its grip. The book does not feel like an ending. It feels like alignment. In writing, he finally teaches without striking. He offers guidance without domination. The sword has become language. Conflict transformed into understanding. What once required force now rests in awareness. This, perhaps, is his greatest duel, to express power without violence, mastery without conquest. When the final lines are set, there is no ceremony. He rinses the brush, rolls the pages, sets them aside. The cave returns to stillness, unchanged, unimpressed. Musashi sits quietly, listening to the silence he once chased through combat. It is here now, complete, unresistant. The Book of Five Rings does not promise peace. It offers clarity. And clarity, he has learned, is the rarest victory of all. Age does not announce itself with thunder. It comes like dusk, unnoticed at first, softening the edges of the world. Musashi feels it in his hands before anywhere else. The way they ache in the cold, the way strength no longer answers instantly. The road has narrowed. The duels are behind him. What remains is a gentle pulling inward, as if the world itself is asking him to step aside and listen. He leaves the towns without ceremony. No farewell crowds gather. No disciple follows closely behind. Musashi has never belonged to noise. He moves toward the cave not as a retreat, but as a return, to stone, to shadow, to the simplicity that once framed his earliest thoughts. The cave waits, indifferent and welcoming, carved patiently by time rather than intention. Inside, the air is cool and steady. Sound behaves differently here. Even breath feels deliberate. Musashi sets his belongings down with care, as though arranging them for someone else. The sword is placed nearby, within reach but untouched. It has traveled farther than most men ever will. Now it rests, finally free from purpose. His body remembers battles his mind no longer revisits. Scars speak quietly when the weather shifts. Bones carry echoes of strain. Yet there is no bitterness in this remembering. Pain is simply another teacher that stayed longer than expected. Musashi sits, legs folded, spine upright, and allows sensation to pass through him without resistance. The days grow uncounted. Time loosens its grip. Morning and evening blur into one long, patient breath. He eats little, sleeps lightly, wakes often, not from restlessness, but from clarity. Thoughts arrive slower now. When they come, they do not linger. They pass like clouds over a mountain that no longer identifies with weather. Occasionally, memories surface. The beach, the road, the fallen, they no longer carry weight. Victory and loss feel equally distant, equally unnecessary. The world he once moved through so sharply now feels like a painting viewed from afar. The details remain, but the urgency has dissolved. Musashi does not pray for a longer life. He does not bargain with the unseen. Death is no longer an opponent to be measured or outpaced. It is a companion walking at a respectful distance. He senses it not as threat, but as completion, the final alignment of body, breath, and silence. He writes little now. Words have finished their work. What remains cannot be recorded without distortion. Emptiness, once defined, now simply exists. The self he sharpened for so long grows thinner, lighter, more transparent. There is relief in this soft erasure. The cave teaches without instruction. Stone holds no opinion. Darkness does not judge. In this space, Musashi feels the last fragments of striving loosen and fall away. There is nothing left to master. Nothing left to defend. The sword, once central to all meaning, is now just another object waiting patiently beside him. Breath slows further. Each inhale feels complete on its own. Each exhale carries no regret. Musashi listens to the quiet pulse within his chest, steady and unafraid. He understands now what the path was always leading toward. Not dominance, not perfection, but release. When weakness arrives, it is welcomed. When stillness deepens, it is not resisted. Musashi does not mark the moment of passing. He simply allows himself to become as unburdened as the cave itself. Another shape of silence returning to the world that formed him. Outside, seasons continue their ancient rhythm. Wind moves through trees, water wears stone. Life does not pause to acknowledge his absence. And that, perhaps, is the final lesson. That meaning does not require witness. As the cave holds its quiet once more, the path fades gently into darkness, leaving behind only stillness and the understanding that nothing was ever truly lost. As the candle burns low, Musashi's footsteps fade into the long corridor of time. Yet his silence remains, warm and enduring, not the silence of forgetting, but the quiet of understanding, passed gently from one age to another. Through his life, we are reminded that true strength does not shout, and that mastery begins the moment striving loosens its grip. Thank you for sharing this quiet space with me tonight, for walking softly through history and allowing its wisdom to rest beside you. You are part of this unbroken circle of listening, where old stories still breathe in the dark. Now, let the day release you. Let your thoughts grow lighter. May your dreams move gently beneath the hush of centuries. This has been the Sleeping Hourglass, where the past tucks you in. Rest well and drift peacefully into the night.